I need to be a bit quiet today because it's in the middle of the night and people are sleeping. That said, greetings BookTube. I'm Anders and this is my July wrap-up. I have read a lot less books than last month, so let's see which ones I actually did read. First up, the books I didn't reread, starting with How to Be a Man and Other Illusions by Duff McKagan. This is a non-fiction biography where Duff talks about the life lessons he's learned since he got sober and started a family. Throughout the book he talks about being on tour and what they're doing on tour and how that relates to the life lessons he's learned. I really like reading books like this. And then I read one of the Sherlock Holmes stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This month I read The Valley of Fear. It starts with Sherlock and Dr. Watson getting a coded note, and when they break the code it leads them to a country house where a murder has taken place. There are a lot of twists and turns in this one and I really enjoyed it. It's not the best Sherlock Holmes story I read. That's still The Hound of the Baskervilles. I believe this is the first story where Moriarty is actually named. And then I read The Magician's Apprentice by Trudy Canavan. This is a standalone prequel to the Black Magician trilogy, and it's set a few hundred years before that trilogy. In this fantasy world, all people have some amount of magic within them. Most have very little, and some have quite a lot and can become magicians. And in order to become a magician and be able to use magic, another magician has to awaken your powers. Then of course there are the naturals, the people who have so much magic power that it awakens on its own. They are extremely dangerous if they aren't trained, and they could literally explode and take a village or so with them. In this story we follow Tessia. Her father is the town healer and she's sort of his assistant, even though there is no future for women in the Healers Guild. The area they live in is governed by a magician called Lord Dakin, and one day when Tessia is at the residence where Lord Dakin lives, one of his visitors from the nearby country of Sachakan tries to seduce her and she feels something explode within her. It turns out she's a natural and she didn't cause too much damage, but because she's a natural, Lord Dakin, who is a magician, has to train her so she can control her abilities. She becomes the magician's apprentice. I really like the way Trudy Canavan writes fantasy, and I can't wait to start a sequel trilogy, The Traitor's Spy. Then on to the books I reread. First up, The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, by J.R.R. Tolkien. I guess everyone knows about this book, but just in case you don't know what it's about this hobbit called Bilbo Baggins that gets invited to a quest along with 13 dwarves by the wizard Gandalf, and they're going to Lonely Mountain so that the dwarves can take back the treasures that their ancestors left there. It's a treasure that's currently guarded by a dragon, so that's fun. Then I read Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah by Richard Bach. This is about two barnstorming pilots, that is, pilots who have small planes and travel around plane rides and or performing stunts in the air. One of the pilots is a messiah that one day decided that he's had enough of the miracle business and he quit. If he stays in one place for too long, people start to gather around him like disciples. He's traveling around the country in his biplane. The other character, who is the main narrator, is kind of a skeptic and doesn't want to believe in miracles. And the Messiah character shows him that they're not so different after all, and that everyone could perform miracles. It's a really funny and thought-provoking book, and it's also very short. It's under 200 pages. Talking about short books, then we have The Little Prince by, I'm going to butcher his name, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It can be summed up by the quote on this birthday card that I got from my friend Olivia, who was also the person who told me about this book in the first place a couple of years ago. The quote is in Portuguese, but in the dedication you can find it in English. And it says, "All grown-ups were children once, although few of them remember it." And that is very true. It's about a pilot who has done an emergency landing in the desert, and while he's trying to fix his plane, a small boy appears and starts telling the pilot about his travels through space. I really love this book and the way it's written, and I highly recommend it to everyone. And as I said, it's very short. And lastly, I read Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. This was sort of a reread because I read a Swedish abridged version of it before. I usually don't like abridged versions, but this one kind of dragged on and on and on and on, while the abridged version was pretty fast-paced. Anyhow, I guess you're all familiar with the story. Robinson is a castaway on a deserted island for over 25 years. To be honest, I had to listen to the audiobook because whenever I sat down to read this, my eyes got heavier and heavier and heavier. I don't know if it's because of the heat we have been having, or if it's because it's just a wall of text. There are no chapters, so every page is like this. However, the story itself is pretty interesting. How Robinson manages to survive on his own all those years. But if you're going to read it, maybe look for an abridged version or listen to the audiobook. I guess that's all for now, so until next time.